Right on time. All right, I'd like to call this meeting on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. to order. It's a regular meeting. Roll call.
McSweeney,
Yeah.
Moravian,
Here.
Newman,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Robinson,
Here.
Wilmot.
Here.
All right, and then we need approval of minutes for the September 20 regular meeting. Any comments, corrections? Take a motion to approve.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 2023 Planning Commission meeting. I'll second it.
Okay, Ted made the motion to approve the minutes and Rich made the second. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Minutes are accepted. Okay, moving on to new business. We have an introduction for a rezoning request from R3 to RM2 for parcel number 52-19-06-400-156 located on Petoskey Street. Deb?
Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, in the report that was prepared in the introduction. For the rezoning, the applicant, Calchick, Developing LLC owns the subject parcel, which is 156. And on the first page of the staff report, you can see the area there. The applicant also owns the adjacent parcel 400-100, which is zone RM2. The dividing line between the RM2 and the R3 district is shown on the map, and it basically divides his two pieces of property into both of the respective bonus districts. The parcel is 0.41 acres in size. The within that same neighborhood, 208 East Sheridan, 209 East Sheridan, and 214 East Sheridan are all small multifamily buildings that are right on the same block that are adjacent to the subject parcel. I pointed out in the discussion on the master plan that the master plan has this area classified as mixed residential too. And in the master plan, the narrative states that the land use category includes neighborhoods with a wider mix of units, single, two, and multi-family structures that appear dispersed within the larger context of the neighborhood. And that's exactly what's happening in this area, where we have single family that are mixed in with some smaller multi-family. Took a look at some of the other plans that we have on file. The one that stuck out was the housing market study for the city of Petoskey, which noted that although the city does have rental property, there's an extremely low number that are available for rent, which is not really helpful to the housing market itself. And as mentioned, the livable Petoskey master plan already designates this neighborhood for a mixture of housing units. I went through some evaluation criteria that is usually standard on a rezoning and found that there was really nothing that was negative relative to this request. I also indicated I wanted to show you a map that we developed about a month ago, which is on the last page of the staff analysis. The map is probably a rental property, and you can see that it's there's a number of single family and persons that are already rental properties. My recommendation is that we allow the request to go to the return for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for John? Rich?
So what would become, would there be a larger area that would become R3?
No, just the subject parts.
Just the subject, okay.
Ted?
I guess, I'm having trouble understanding, you're referencing the master plan, calling this multifamily. But the zoning designation is R3.
The master plan. Map, there's in the master plan, the future land use category
Right.
designates this area as mixed residential. Reaction two. And the narrative in the master plan says the neighborhood that has a wider mix of single to multi-family structures that are interdispersed in areas developed for large scale multi-unit residential buildings. So this area, this neighborhood is designated as that classification.
And again, I don't have it in front of me. How much, if you will, the RM2 is multifamily, obviously.
Right.
And this is R3, which is one of the, I'll call, we used to call them single family duplex. So with regard to the master plan, future land use map, which I don't have in front of me, how far is it extending into R1s or R2s or R3s?
I don't have a future plan.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa,
But it's.
would it be possible to get that up on the screen?
It's a large neighborhood segment of that part of.
She's trying to take notes.
So and feel free, certainly Cynthia to comment or anyone else, Rick, who was here for the master plan process. When we were doing that, I don't know if other people were entirely clear. We didn't have extensive discussion per my understanding of the future land use map. It was kind of a general discussion, what we might want to do. So I don't.
You know, we did, and I was looking to see if I have it, and I don't. We did have discussion about that, and then I don't think we ever made any decisions. I don't remember.
I don't think we changed. We had a future land use map, I believe, from the previous master plan.
Right.
I don't know that we changed it. I don't
Does
recall.
anybody remember changing it? I
Do you
don't.
remember, Rick?
Oh, you weren't there.
I don't recall if there was a
I don't remember.
formal change to the map or not.
So are you able to find it?
I remember the
Sorry,
discussion.
Lisa.
So I just want to make the general point that when we were in the master plan process, I understood that we had this thing called a future land use plan,
Mm-hmm,
and it was some directions we might go.
mm-hmm.
In some of the plan, it wasn't just a map of our current zoning, because that would be the zoning districts.
Right.
So it kind of maybe anticipated what you might do in the future. I didn't feel there was extensive discussion, but there was kind of general notions. So anyway, I just want to make the point that I never quite understood how we would do that. I assumed we'd go through the zoning ordinance as we did. We would make the master plan, and then what would follow would be, then our zoning would flow from that. And then as we went through either the whole plan or districts, we'd start to talk about master plan, current plan, what we might want to do we want to change some things as we go?
Right.
Okay, so is this the future land use plan?
All right, Charlie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wasn't there during this process,
Mhm.
but it seems to me like this is a future visualization of what might be possible.
Right.
It's not a directive as to what will happen,
Right.
but what should be considered
Mhm.
in terms of
Right.
future rezoning. And so I understand the reference to this, and I think it's a valid reference to this. As you can see there in the beige area, MR2 mixed residential. But my point being that I think we have to discount this as any kind of demonstrable evidence in support of this request, because the zoning has not been redone. And this has not been considered as a part of that redo of the zoning, which we all would like to do. But one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is we're not doing it, and we're not starting it. And it's a big process, and we need to get into the weeds on that.
Mhm.
So I'll get off my soapbox on that and get back to the matter at hand. The matter at hand is, do we want to do an individual property like this based on the need that we have for housing? but exclusive of the fact that we haven't done the job that we intend to do with regard to an overall 30,000-foot rework of the entirety of the zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
I am left uncomfortable with the planner's description that this is not spot zoning. I get it, I understand it, I read it. I am not saying that we shouldn't go to public hearing. I'm undecided as to whether it's an appropriate thing to rezone this parcel at this time. But
It's supported.
it's supportable, but I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. And given the fact that I did a tour down there, it is surrounded by single-family homes. And I'm not sure I entirely buy into this probable rental in terms of a couple of these parcels that surround it. The one right next to the Red Star, for instance, appears to be just an equipment lot surrounded by a fence. So that could be rented, but it's not housing. It's just an empty lot.
You
With
have
equipment on it.
within the neighborhood, actually, right on Sheridan. In the neighborhood, we have 208, across the street, 209, and then 214, which is owned by the applicant. You have 3 small apartment units that are not large, but I don't know how many units there are in each of the buildings. But they're probably between 4 to 6, maybe 8 at the most, but they're very compatible with the character of the neighborhood.
And they're well kept and there's nothing wrong with it.
If you see on the map, the light orange. There's quite a bit of light orange in the south part of the street. That in the master plan was recommending those neighborhoods to be basically mixed residential. That's the description. Having a combination of single family duplexes and multi-family if the lots are big enough. There's not many large lots left in that immediate neighborhood of Sheridan and Petoskey, with the exception of this lot. The only other one I can find was on Standish, and it's only 100 by 100 and it's only RM2, which really can't accommodate a multi-family, but could be divisible, accommodate 2 single family. So, and it's not a lot that is isolated, it's adjacent to 2 other parcels that are already zoned RM2. So it is not spot zoning. My thought, I guess, going down the road, if this were rezoned, since the applicant owns the lot on Sheridan and the lot on Petoskey, there's an opportunity, basically, a possibility of having a shared parking lot and having some additional open space rather than having everything but building the parking lot. So there's an opportunity because he owns both the properties to try to work out an arrangement where they could make a nice small development within the neighborhood.
I think to address your concern, yes, we do. Right now, we're working on the sign ordinance. We are taking pieces of this and trying to tackle it. And that will happen, but we need to complete what we're working on right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with this kind of patch. It abuts that the RM2 zone, the RM2 zone. So when I think of spot zoning, and I didn't look to see if there's a definition in here, but spot zoning to me means it's an island in another zone. So this isn't, it is directly connected to other parcels that have that. So I think for the sake of housing, which is one of our high priorities.
I understand.
This makes sense.
I understand, but I also am going to be reserving judgment until I
Of
hear
course.
whether neighbors come forward
Of course,
with single family homes and speak at the public hearing. I don't want to stand in the way of a public hearing, but I just wanted to express my reservations.
okay. Any other comment, Rich?
Yeah, I don't know that we ever adopted the proposed future land use plan. But there certainly has been discussion around various topics related to, expanding the opportunity for more housing and some greater density within the walkable neighborhoods of downtown. And so I think, a possible rezoning of this parcel fits into that larger context. And I think as long as we all feel that it's moving in the direction that the rewrite of the zoning ordinance will take us, I don't think it's a bad thing to consider this possibility. The other comment I guess I wanted to make was, I think this block is a good example of what oftentimes happens where, and maybe the RM2, the logic for designating the RM2 the way it's shown on this map is that it was based off of Emmett Street. Now, why Emmett Street was picked as opposed to some other street to be RM2, I'm not quite sure. But when you think about that larger block, if the western 1/3 of it along Emmett Street is zoned RM2, I don't see any reason why. I mean, the difference in character really makes a change over to Howard Street. In other words, the parcels that are fronting on Howard Street, the end of their backyards is really, to me, the logical place where RM2 should separate from R3. Wherever that one.
So you're saying the west side of Howard, the houses fronting that should remain our,
Well, I don't know, but
Three.
it's slightly different character there than.
okay,
of
then the
block.
rest of it, okay.
And so if the middle 1/3 of the green became orange, it seems like that would be the right thing to do in my mind. And so I'm open to sending this to public hearing as well.
So are you suggesting you'd like to look at that takes a lot more.
No, I'm
Input.
not suggesting that in this.
So in this case, we would do a patch, but with the caveat that going forward, we'd like to consider changing the boundary for the RM2.
Yeah, I like your term, Cynthia, patch. I think that's a good way to describe it.
Ken?
I had a question, as I went through the packet, one thing, or this agenda item for John, the evaluation criteria, it wasn't clear to me where they came from.
That's the valuation criteria that I used, because
Okay.
the current zoning code doesn't have the valuation criteria.
Right.
So,
So
I looked for it.
I just wanted to make the point that these are certainly valid things to consider, but in the context of reading this, there's no mention of that, and it would seem as if this was almost a law in the city of Petoskey, an ordinance that we were following the evaluation criteria. And this is what John feels is a reasonable, accepted criteria, but not
It's not
something,
a shall.
something we,
Mandated.
Yeah.
The ordinance.
okay. I have a question about, just so I understand this. So am I necessarily talking about rentals when I say multifamily or not?
not really, because you could have a complex that's owner occupied that has multiple units.
So it could be either. Okay. Okay. I wanted to make the point then, that those are my questions, that we don't exactly, rental units seem to be at a premium for what John has told us in the city. But that I didn't want that to be confused with the percent of rental units we have as a city. I believe, and correct me if we're wrong, what I saw was 40.8%, 41%. The state average is 27. Traverse City is 39, Grand Rapids is 44, Charlevoix is 50, Gaylord 69, Harbor Springs is 23%. So when I think of a city, a small town, and I think of the character of a town, you certainly want rental options. We're at 40%. What's too much when, I don't know.
You're getting up there usually.
It changes the character.
The benchmark that I use is that when you hit over 50%, then you've got a lopsided house.
So I think we need,
Close to that benchmark.
we need to keep that in mind.
What do you mean by lopsided housing market? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, when you have
What the
more
problem?
rentals and you have.
What's the problem with that?
Well, the problem is that, as I explained during our last meeting on housing quality, there is a correlation between rental property and property maintenance. So if you have more rental properties in your community, you have a higher chance of having properties that are not being maintained appropriately, which then, has another implication on taxable value.
Yes, but by the same token, isn't there evidence to show that young people today are less interested in ownership and more interested in rental? And so the dynamics, the demographics of our population is changing at the same time.
It can be, but it doesn't matter, but the literature still says that if you have a greater concentration of rental properties in a small community, and I'm saying small can be a small community of 30,000 plus, then you start running into a different basket of problems relative to property maintenance issues.
In this particular case, I was very impressed with the maintenance quality of this existing owner's properties, for instance.
So I wanted to point out, it's provided tonight in our sites. I did talk to Cynthia about it. When I'm talking about a zoning change for a property or in general, the most obvious thing that comes to mind is what are the rules in the current district? What are the rules in the new district? So that's been provided tonight. Maybe some people didn't get to look at it. I tried to look it over. I was concerned about spot zoning a bit too. When I think of zoning, I think of two aspects, and I don't know, we've hit on both of them. We've discussed, we often discuss physical characteristics of the zoning. What's the setbacks? What's the building height? These kind of issues. So physical, what's it going to look like? But the other part is uses. So the thing that jumps out, well, the things that are different, the setbacks are fairly similar. Front yards are the same, rear are the same, side is only slightly different. The building height in the R3 is 2.5 stories, 25 feet. RM2 is 3 stories and 30 feet, pretty similar. What struck me more than the physical was the uses. And I looked at the RM1 and then I looked at the RM2, the multifamily districts. And the RM2 added quite a few different, several different uses, which we have there. I think it's number 702. And I was looking at that. So besides what the site looks like, and we know there's an intent to do housing is what we've heard. But as we all know, when we zone, we don't zone for a particular use. We zone a district, so it can be used many different ways. So now you've got offices, you've got assisted living, you've got boarding houses. When I thought of what the applicant wanted to do, I thought of it more of a RM1 kind of a thing. Well, let's just change it so it can be multifamily. The commission needs to know when you go to RM2, you're also changing uses. So I drove by that street. It's a small street, small block there, and not a ton going on, and I don't know what could happen in the future, but that to me was a bit different. So that's when we get to this discussion, whether we call it technically spot zoning or we just think it doesn't quite fit. I think of, when I think of driving down a street, I think of the cohesion of the street. I think of the uses generally being similar, although there's clearly partitions in the town, but this would be one property on this block that would be dramatically different, a little bit physically, but certainly in terms of uses that were allowed. So that's why for me, it seemed a bit spotty, if not technically spot zoning to do this.
To purposely interrupt you for a second,
Yes,
to stay on that point. It according to this, section 702 says that the following additional uses over RM one
Right.
are by special condition only.
Yeah, so special condition, as we all know, only means they have to meet the conditions. Doesn't mean you have the ability. We used to have a hearing. I don't believe we do now. We changed that rule. But people would come to the hearing and say, well, I don't want it. It's a special condition use. And we would say, we have to do it if they meet the conditions. So it just means that to do these uses, there's conditions you have to meet, but it doesn't mean that we can say no, like you cannot approve them. You absolutely have to approve them if they meet the characteristics. So it used to be a public hearing. Now it's, I think, just administrative. We changed the special condition use and John.
I
might-
don't remember. That doesn't sound right. I think,
Special land use.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway,
All right, I want to,
You're correct on, requires public hearing, but they need all the conditions.
you have to approve it. It's not, you can say, well, I don't want that. I don't think that's quite right for this block.
But just look at the record, this is not.
Right,
Spot
right.
zoning is like. An applicant coming in
Yeah.
saying, I have a 0.41 acre site, and I want to put outdoor storage or an indoor storage facility. Which is more of like a heavy commercial, light industrial, that is spot zoning. This is just a gradation up of the number of housing units.
Yeah.
That can go on in particular piece.
I did want to clarify for the offices portion of that.
Mhm.
You have to, it has to be immediately adjacent to or directly across the street from a business zone.
Okay, so that
one,
would-
B2, B3.
That one.
So that wouldn't qualify for this
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
The rest of them would.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, the boarding house, assisted living. And that's. So it's just those two things
I just,
that are in addition.
I know the point has been made, it's not necessarily spot zoning. I think it's kind of unusual that in a block on a street. That one house, one property has different uses than the other ones. I think it's,
That's the characteristics of an old neighborhood.
Mhm.
Historically,
yeah,
neighborhoods had mixed use, they had boarding houses, family, multifamily, all in the same block. It's just, you got an habit of segregating everything into their own little basket.
And some of those things are a good idea to
Mhm.
keep segregating. The auto body shop
Right.
next door,
So
Um,
we simultaneously, over the last couple of years, heard a lot of discussion about simplifying and making things easier and more. So the more there's things that stick out and properties, it's like, wait, I thought you could do this on this street, the house across this. No, that's different. That's a different zoning.
well, that's why I think we need to take
Right.
note of this little patch we're doing and then know that when we tackle zoning, which is going to
Right.
be a hard job,
Right,
that we remember this section of what we did and what the future intent would be based on our discussion.
my last comment, just about, as we continue to grapple with housing and think about what potential exists for multifamily. Looking, and it's been said here before, I think by Rick Newman, I'm always cognizant as we start to take small single family dwellings and put an overlay of mixed use residential multifamily,
Mhm.
what's really the plan? And maybe I have different people have different opinions, but is the plan to hope things get ripped down and new things get built? How much are you encouraging altering? When you've got small single family homes, they're not multifamily homes. So I just want everyone to be aware that,
Mhm.
okay, my plan is that these will be torn down in time. But that's all I had.
Okay,
Well, in this case, there's nothing to tear down because.
Right.
It's vacant land.
Right.
Rick?
I just wanted to point out one other character of the property that we haven't talked about, and that is that it is a landlocked parcel. It is not, is not adjacent to a street really. That Petoskey Street, I guess, is a street.
It is.
I've never understood that in walking by there, whether that was an alley or what, but I always thought it was an alley, but I see now in this map that it's Petoskey Street. But truly, the parcel is sort of I won't say landlocked, but it doesn't have frontage on a significant street, since it's a dead end, half a block long street.
Well, when you consider other parcels, what's the name of that apartment complex right down there by Bridge Street? That is only accessible.
Oh, for the senior Riverview.
View Apartments, but that's at the end of a dead end that looks like an alley.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, from one side, the other side is off of Bridge Street.
Okay, any other discussion? Does the commission want any if we do choose to do the public meeting? Does the commission want any more information for discussing this?
Question, I would assume that public hearing in this case would include notification of the neighbors up and down the block. Yeah,
Especially for the public, now that you mention it, I think it would be useful. I know it's been provided here, but just to have maybe a little more straightforward. Comparison of the districts, height setbacks, just on one sheet. I made one of my own, but uses, just so a quick look, so you could take one piece of paper and say. At least that part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Is yours well enough to be used by everyone?
Just handwritten.
Oh, okay. Right. So is there any other discussion? I'll take a motion for holding a public hearing.
I move that where's the parcel number here? Or where's the case number? Oh, let me go to the back. Let me go to the script. Based on the documentation submitted, I make a motion to schedule a public hearing regarding the zoning parcel of 52-19-06-400-156 from R3 single family to RM2 multiple family based on the future land use map and goals outlined in the master plan.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
okay, Charlie makes the motion. Rick seconds. Any other discussion?
I just
Okay.
wanted to state I'm in favor of a public hearing, but I'm again, want to. Listen to what people say, might or may not say, and still reserve my right to.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, definitely.
All right. Do we need to do a roll call vote? Can we just all? If you're in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Everybody raised their hand and said aye. All right. Move on to second item of new business discussion regarding Crestview Commons, which is, I guess, we call the Petoskey Town Center now, and the possibility for converting excessive parking areas into building pads. John?
Well, actually, Lisa's the one that took the time to go out and analyze the park, so I think I'd let her explain.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so at the August meeting, there was. John made a recommendation, speaking with the property owner in regards to potentially building out that vacant parking, the excessive parking that they have on the site. So Christine and I did go out and did a physical count. And we found there to be 699 parking spaces according to, you'll see on the map that the owner has supplied. Their parking is a little bit different, 782. So I'm not sure how that's been modified over time. It's even less than what was originally approved back in the 80s. When this all started.
Hold on, currently there's 699,
Correct.
but the owner says there's 700
They're
something.
saying there's 752, but I'm not sure if they got this from the previous owner. They
Okay.
acquired US properties, acquired this a few years ago. And they're the ones that have been kind of doing the Facebook sort of location and adding the stores.
Okay.
So in essence, with all of that being said, this would fall under a shopping center. And based on the parking requirements for a shopping center, it's one space per 375 square feet of gross floor area. And with that being said, there could potentially be, depending on, they have listed on your gross leasable area. I'm not sure how that correlates with gross floor area. I don't have that information from the developer, but essentially it could be reduced anywhere from 221 to 226 spaces. And still meet the requirements of today's parking requirements for that location.
Okay, if they were to build something, won't they need more parking? So you won't,
They could use the space of the parking that they're taking up. I mean, it's not, not knowing what size space they would need, it depends on what they would be bringing in.
Right, but don't they also, in addition to that, because it's another unit, you have to consider more square footage?
No, I think the way that you look at it, I don't have my calculator. But if you take 226 parking spaces times 350 square feet, that's usually 350 square feet is the parking space plus part of the new. So
Plus part of the maneuver lane?
maneuvering. So,
Okay.
I see Matt's gonna do it.
77,000.
Okay, so that's about 1.75 acres. So if you were to put a small building on that, they would still have enough parking within that 77,000 square feet.
Okay,
See, and then the other part of it is the shopping centers, is because you've got, like, for example, Lucky's is gonna be there. If they were to put a small restaurant or a drive-through coffee, those operate at different times than some of the others, so there's the whole idea of shared parking.
mhm,
The bottom line is that Lisa and I thought visually, you know, I was happy that you went out and did the count, is that our gut told us that there was too much parking. And the developers, we had a meeting with them, 2 Fridays ago. Right?
That's Friday.
That's right. We had a meeting with them on last Friday to go over this with them, and they were pretty excited about the opportunity maybe of bringing in an outlet. And their discussion was primarily like on the food and drink side,
mhm.
with their small footprints. And
Bringing in a what?
like a food and drink, like a coffee, drive-through coffee shop,
Okay.
something along that.
So, and because it's a PUD, we would just approve,
Yeah, you have to-
a drive-through.
Site plan reviews and
Yeah.
an amendment.
okay,
And they were thinking the corner. You know where the PetSmart is going to be,
mhm,
if you go back to 131 directly, it would be that corner back there. Now, one of the things that we found out, which was pretty interesting, was the former owner, when they negotiated the lease for Hobby Lobby required them to put in the lease that the field of parking, pretty much quite a bit of, maybe 2/3 of the parking lot cannot be used for anything other than a parking lot, because they didn't want their sign or their building.
Right.
right.
Yeah.
I wondered about that problem.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to go back to Hobby Lobby and renegotiate that. But they were, happy that, you know, we had offered them the opportunity to see if it works. So, you know, bring us something so the planning commission can evaluate.
Mhm. It did, I went to the site. And that's quite a cliff there, so it did seem like you could tuck in buildings down here. And when you're on the highway, you wouldn't see that, they won't be visible,
They won't.
but you can still see the big box stores, which is.
Right, but
What
if you
we're gonna
get a
promote.
business in there that's got name recognition.
Mhm,
An example, it would be like a Tim Hortons.
mhm,
People see the sign Tim Hortons, they'll drive in
mhm,
to get a cup of coffee or something. And that's kind of what they're thinking was something that had name recognition that would pull people in,
mhm.
provide more activity for the center, which is their goal. They did say that they do have a couple other prospects for some of the small tenant spaces. So they're actively marketing. So that's good.
Okay.
Does the parking usage, or the parking requirement change with the use of the individual facility on the pad? So for instance, a drive-through coffee shop versus a restaurant?
So the way the ordinance states is shopping center is there's a definition for it, which is having multiple tenants essentially. So that has one set.
So as an example, just to translate, former JR is now Lucky's.
That's not part of.
I understand it's a different parcel, but at one time it was kind of a corner of the parcel, right? So do we know how many parking spaces that has?
That might be the 50 space difference.
Could be.
If that was,
There you go.
if that was the original part of this larger development.
Well, and as an example, I can't imagine that if you've got an excess of 200 parking spaces, is that right? So I can't imagine that you couldn't fit something like JR's into a corner of the existing parking area and utilize all those 200 spaces, but maybe
Right,
that's just a gut reaction.
yeah.
Ted?
So I had a question, yeah, again, to this calculation, using a shopping center calculation, maybe it's not a whole lot different, but. Imagine what there used to be, which was more little establishments along the way. Does that change parking dramatically or not that much?
Not within the context of shopping. Because you have multiple tenants, the other thing you have to take a look at is their hours of operation, because you have overlap. Well, for example, Hobby Lobby is closed at some, other businesses may be open.
Right,
So there's.
you could have a professional service business, an accountant,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
okay.
Another question, do we know if PetSmart is a done deal now?
I do, it made it sound like it.
Great.
So I was confused a little bit about, so we're talking about adding potentially more commercial. Small things in there, in the idea came up because basically there's excess parking and space.
Oh,
But so much of what we talked about is visualization, obviously, so I was concerned about that. You know, that seemed to be, they thought, a huge issue, that's why we passed multiple things. We changed,
Visibility. you mean?
right, of establishments, so. You wouldn't want to put something that blocked the view of something else.
That's why they were talking about putting it in that corner.
That hill, and how would you see those places?
It would be primarily through the
Signage.
On 131.
So they would lose visibility, but they'd be on the sign, maybe, okay. Then we had the issue,
That's for them to try to figure out what works best for them.
well, that's when we had the issue with how much you could put on signs too, with multiple things here,
Which is why they wanted a place with name recognition,
right,
where you see that Tim Hortons.
Right.
sign and yep,
Yeah.
it's down there, let's
Right.
go.
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
They had other ideas on
Yeah.
some other venues, but their idea was primarily, correct me if I'm wrong, they kind of gravitated right into the food and the beverage because it brings people in and then gives exposure to the other businesses.
Okay. Because I wondered, because it begs, this whole thing begs the obvious thing, could we put more commercial in this space? I think there's a few open spots.
Well, and for that matter, if they wanted to put food in restaurants,
Yeah.
you know, number 40 and number 50, I mean. There's plenty of spaces in the available shopping center, they could
Yeah,
put another restaurant.
that's the reason why I wanted to include
Yeah,
the thing on the Grayfield redevelopment. This is a big issue.
yeah,
In a lot of communities where they have underutilized,
Yeah,
yeah.
underperforming shopping centers.
Yeah, I just think you look at maximizing the space that you have, underutilized space, excess parking, you know, it's worth taking a look at.
And just so you guys are aware, 150, that blue box that's on there, they do have a tenant slated for that location as well.
Well, 150 is PetSmart,
110.
I'm sorry.
110.
110,
110, I'm sorry.
Okay. Cool.
But I can see that you might, maybe a Tim Hortons, I'm not, I don't go there, but it's typically standalone though, isn't it often? So those places might like a look of different than just, could I stick myself in this row of,
Good.
you know,
But, you know, I think the discussion that we had with them was, we didn't tell them what they had to do. We just said,
yeah,
we think you have excess parking. We identified X number of spaces. If there's something innovative that you guys can do, come back in for an amendment to the PUD and let's take a look at it.
And I think they were excited about the idea of possibly having something
Right.
like be a drive-through, like John said, to bring people into that facility. Expose it a little bit more, but also still generate business on the site without having to have storefronts.
Over south.
So what was our ask tonight then? Just general discussion or? Okay.
Was housing talked about at all, apartments?
Well, that was it had been talked about. It's too bad they couldn't convert the Kmart, like build a couple of stories. That would not impact the view. That'd be pretty marvelous, but I think there were discussions with the developer, and as far as I know, they weren't interested. I think Amy may have had some preliminary discussions.
Well, maybe this type of I'm not that familiar with companies that own shopping centers and whether they want to get into residential
Yeah,
tenant arrangements or not, probably not, I'm guessing, but
right.
you know, we talked about the visibility and the fact that the development would be tucked under the bottom of the hill there, well, residential wouldn't require visibility if it was residential.
Right.
So anyway,
But the one thing I went there and that if you did residential, which I'm willing to put it anywhere. But it would be the highway above it and a shopping center in front of it. It just wouldn't be a quality of life thing.
It'd be a little less expensive housing, probably.
Right, but I do think the oh, what shops are the Bed Bath and Beyond shop used where that mall is, there's that back property that's on Cemetery Road. I think that'd be a perfect place to put an apartment complex.
Not just talking, just. That would make a great housing. development.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just sitting there.
yeah,
Parking
along
lot,
the north edge.
You would pay.
Yeah,
along the
right,
north edge of that
right,
property.
right.
Anyway, maybe you could approach them and suggest, I think Amy did talk to them about it.
I have Lisa talk about it because I killed one of the projects down in Traverse.
You're
They wanted to convert a Kmart into storage.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a gray box, very good gray box solution.
We'll keep you informed. This is fine.
Okay.
Great idea.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, yep. All right, public comment, there's no public. Commissioner,
Just sorry.
Okay.
What was that comment that was on the Zoom that popped up?
It's on,
Yeah.
um,
I couldn't read it when it popped up.
Remember that our local demand for ownership opportunities is extremely high, but that doesn't always translate to single family residential. Multifamily design could in the future become a more attainable option for ownership equity building. And then
Okay.
I apologize for not catching it. She said, just food for thought.
Okay.
So.
I think a great example of that is the condos on East Lake Street. A block away from the county building, used to be an old apartment.
it was an apartment.
Across from my house.
Yeah, these are small,
Mhm.
1 and 2 bedroom condos. They're really, they're affordable. and-
They were for.
Not anymore.
That was our first condo.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And you can see that, that's the kind of which I think what Andrew is talking about. Is we think of multifamily as always rental, multifamily could be
Mhm.
a condo or a co-op.
Right.
I do have to say that people were saying they thought the properties looked really nice. I think the architecture is just something better could be done than what exists there now. I don't find them attractive or that they exactly fit in.
I'm sorry.
I didn't say attractive. I just said.
Well,
There's a difference. Yeah, yeah.
Be nice
And
to have some,
perfectly, I mean, perfectly adequate.
Yeah,
Not
kinda.
beautiful.
no. So,
They've been there a while.
right, but if whoever does, it would be nice if they relooked at their architectural choices. Because there's 3 of those. 2 next door to each other and 1 across the street, and it's all the same.
There was
Look.
a builder that developed those back in the day.
Mhm. I mean, they could really use
Hal Taylor's
Bernie
dad,
Alder.
Hal Taylor's dad, I think.
Bernie
Oh, yeah?
Alder was-
oh,
Yeah. So I think so.
huh, interesting,
It is owned by a builder. Yeah.
Right. well, hopefully they maybe could get some fresh ideas. All right, commissioner comments,
These parcels got-
10?
I had a question just about, how are we doing on the fence on the,
Yeah.
Phase 2 review.
yeah,
They have a permit. She's on my list to contact to find out what an
okay.
estimated time.
And I just had I don't know if it means that the J.C. Penney building was going and then seems like there isn't much there. Does anyone know much about that? I don't see much happen, but
Everything was internal to start with.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of activities, so much being stripped out.
yeah, now I don't see much, but
They're probably waiting for the next subcontractor to have availability, my guess. Have lots of problems that way. You get to a certain point, you need the next guy, it's not available.
All right, don't forget if you're talking, put on your thing.
Oh, sorry.
All right, any more commissioner comments? All right, moving on to updates.
I'm good. They discussed me in the shopping centers and update. So,
Okay. All right,
Well, I just want to comment, this was an interesting. Yeah, it was about the Grayfield redevelopment.
thank you.
So,
I'll pass stuff like that along to you.
I had one,
so there's no updates
Charlie.
about Maple Block or a lofts at Lumber Square or,
wonderful.
okay.
Wonderful.
And no new word on either Grand Villas or the lot across the street, the old Mitchell Market. And any activity there?
I know they said they were waiting for costs to go down. I don't know if that ever happens, but that it got too expensive. But they're gonna, I think that was in February, we gave them an extension.
Yeah, well, they're currently working on 3 projects. They have Phoenix.
Oh.
They're building a small subdivision out next to the high school. School campus. And then they're doing the building downtown. The MEDC. So they've got 3 projects there.
Okay,
Is there any word about the status of the short-term rental before the council?
Council, yeah, and bringing it up. Next Monday night, they're having a special meeting at 6 o'clock. So anybody who's on this short-term rental committee, I'm gonna send you an email out. They have a meeting next Monday at 6. That's the entire meeting's on short-term
it's gonna be a work session.
work session.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm debating whether I could do that Zoom or if I should come and be present.
And your other projects, I'm trying to remember what they were, your other recommended projects that you wanted to engage in this fall.
Well, the one we took care of, and we did the rental inspection ordinance, that's been transferred over there to administration. I don't think it made the city council back yet. And the other one was the housing assessment, we did share it with you in PowerPoint. The only other one that we'd like to take a look at would be the applicability of creating a neighborhood enterprise zone for the area in town that we were talking about along the Bear River, the neighbors are down there, Sandy and Sheridan along the Bear. So,
Okay, so is it time to begin to tee up other initiatives
yeah, we can, I mean.
like zoning reform?
Once we had a good program, we pretty much accomplished those already.
All right, so we're working on the sign ordinance, the sign committee. we
I
met.
understand that.
Is this the 3rd time we met? Anyway, we've met multiple times. Okay, twice. And we're cruising through the whole document.
Andrea did make a couple of comments. She said Michigan Maple Block did not receive their RAP grant.
Oh,
They're still pursuing the CRP through MDC.
What prevented getting?
I think those grants are pretty,
I think the rat. But I mean,
oh, man.
but competitive, hard to,
competitive.
yeah. I just had a comment, the Grayfield was very interesting. The article you supplied us with, certainly learned a lot, eating out why this stuff happens, changing trends. One thing I mixed feelings about, so as you try and expedite things, I think my understanding is the article is written by a planning AICP person or 2 people. And invariably, as you try and expedite things and make things quote unquote easier, it gets to administrative approvals and things that don't go to things like planning commissions. And I certainly have mixed feelings about some of that, where small town, when we have planning commission meetings, people can come. When we do things administratively, they don't really know about it. So I just think there's a pros and cons to those things.
Andrew says
Yeah.
478 on the last scroll.
Okay, what do they need?
Here, you gotta press.
Oh, what do they need? A set like 78, what is that?
Obviously, 78 is low.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many points they have.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to take a second. I know we've been getting this work from David Troutman. And I do take time to go through and read his comments and look at his work. But I thought this rendition that we did for West Mitchell. You know, of trees that could be planted. And just kind of a beautification of West Mitchell. I mean, when you drive down there, and I hadn't really noticed until I saw this work that he did, there are no trees. There are no trees along the street. It is not attractive.
No,
It's not a good gateway to our city. It's not pretty. And I just think, you know, with some trees and some shrubs.
even shrubs is, it provides some separation from the
Yes.
cars ripping by it.
Yes, it would just do a lot to improve that corridor.
Right.
I mean, that is the welcome to Petoskey. You know, other than driving down the hill and seeing the view of the bay, that's the welcome to Petoskey. And I just think we could do some work to improve that.
Right.
So I appreciate his, you know, feedback and input and.
You know, and maybe that kind of thing would help with, I contrast with Charleroi, which does everything possible to make it difficult for you to get through downtown. And ours was like this speedway corridor, these huge lanes, no trees, just drive as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was even thinking maybe flowers in that area in the summer and then some kind of
Something.
pine treatment in the winter.
Yeah, we talked about it internally. You need to have a corridor design.
Yes, exactly.
Standardized lighting,
Right.
no
It's-
vegetation.
Right.
It's worth looking at, and it could improve that whole area dramatically.
right,
Be also
Right.
nice to slow them down through there.
Right.
too.
That too.
So,
Well, remember, that was part of the discussion with Amy where, you know, we were, any new development that took place, we were gonna try to put the buildings toward the street and put the parking in the back as opposed to the way a lot of it is set up now with the parking in the front. And that would automatically close the feeling of the street down and when you,
the problem is that process, waiting
is long term.
really long.
yeah, yeah,
Not only that, but they talked about doing zero setback. But I think in that area, they need to do more than a zero setback to get trees and some streetscape going.
Yeah, probably all of this area that would be planted is all MDOT right of way.
Right.
Mhm.
Andrea commented from a local non-housing perspective, she agrees.
Lisa, where does the non-motorized city plan exist? The ground plan for the non-motorized bicycle paths and so forth?
Didn't the parks just do a non-motorized master plan?
We have a non-motorized facilities plan.
Is that a Parks and Rec responsibility?
No.
It's ours. I think it's ours.
It's.
It should be ours, yeah.
I just thought maybe it would be worth the commission taking another look at that. It's, huh?
2050.
Oh, yeah.
And furthermore, it seems to be kind of a patchwork quilt. You know, I know that non-motorized was really kind of cut off on Kalamazoo when the Kalamazoo was done. There's the design of the roadway there, which I think is wonderful, but it doesn't really include a bicycle path.
That was a missed opportunity, I think.
And if you take a look at Jennings, theoretically, what Amy's vision was, it was it'd be parking on the one side of Jennings, which would be the south side of Jennings, and that the north side of Jennings would be a bicycle route, which is currently designated as a bicycle route by the 1 4-inch sign on a pole in the middle of Jennings that has a picture of a bicycle on it. But otherwise, it's not identifiable. And of course, there's parking on that side to obstruct, you know, any official designation. I just think that the whole concept may be worth a review.
And Charlie, if I could add to that, that's why I pushed in the, you know, certainly the enabling legislation from the state for planning commissions, we're supposed to approve all projects within the area of the master plan, which would include all street projects. So what I've heard in the past, and this is one of my beefs, but is, well, we're just doing the street over and we're not changing anything. Well, sometimes they do change a few things. But also I said, you know, maybe you want to change something. Well, maybe you want to add a bike path, maybe you, so that's what we do. You know, so that's why I'm hoping to dovetail onto that comment, is that in the future, the city can move towards more of a, that's when you start, oh, we're doing a street, should we change anything? What could we do better?
Well, and someone that I spoke to within the city government, and it was someone on the staff, as I recall, but I'd tell you who it was if I could remember. But for instance, I suggested that maybe there was a way just with paint to designate, to more clearly designate the bicycle path on Jennings.
They put, like,
But I'm also told, that person told me that there are certain state regulations that one must meet and are required if you're going to designate a bicycle lane. Has to be a certain width and blah, 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 blah. So I just think that the whole subject is one worthy of review, because I think in concert with a more livable Petoskey, if we had a more obvious, I think the Greenway, while I wasn't 100% in favor of it, I think it's a wonderful asset.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting greenways everywhere, but I think that we need to complete the network of non-motorized access through the town. And I think that would be a wonderful asset for the community.
John, if you feel like we have caught up on our initial tasks that we set out to do,
Yeah.
it seems like it'd be a good idea to maybe throw out the next 3 items and
I
see
can take a look.
see what sticks
Okay.
for the planning commission.
Can do.
And if anybody on the planning commission think about it, if you wanted prioritize something, you know, bring it to the next meeting.
I just think the sooner we dive into this whole issue of our zoning
Mm-hmm,
districts,
mm-hmm.
starts with a bigger general discussion and what we have, where we want to go, and then there's a lot of work to get there, but
That's right. You were gonna
It should
start
be
the
out.
zoning piece of it in October.
We're applying for MEDC technical.
Got it.
okay.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that,
So I, how about everybody else? Does
Well, and I
that seem
think
like the
the
next
summit,
step?
the summit has some seminars specifically addressing how communities can get started down that path. So one of the reasons I wanted to go.
Okay, if you can't go, let me know and maybe we can. I mean, I think I probably could manage it. But if somebody else wanted to do it,
Andrea, comment on the, non-motorized facilities.
all right, is there anything? Anything else? We are adjourned at 7:03.
No. That's good.
It works pretty well when we don't